The sound of shattering ceramic was the only thing that broke the silence. It echoed off the cold, sterile tiles of the kitchen, a sound too loud, too final for a Tuesday evening. For a single, suspended moment, the world stopped. My 2-year-old daughter, Lily, who had been clinging to my leg like a tiny barnacle, froze. Her wide, innocent eyes stared at the white fragments of the dinner plate scattered across the floor like broken promises. Then, a voice from the living room, sharp and cold as ice shards, sliced through the air. Breaking things seems to be your only real talent, Ava. First my son's spirit, now my dinnerware. Tell me, which one gives you more satisfaction? That was Eleanor, my mother-in-law. Have you ever been spoken to in a way that feels like a physical blow? A voice that bypasses your ears and strikes you right in the chest, stealing your breath. That's Eleanor's gift. I bent down, my movements stiff, my hands trembling as I began to pick up the larger pieces. "I'm sorry," I murmured, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Lily." She was holding onto my leg. It was an accident. Accidents are for clumsy people. This is carelessness. You think these things just appear? That they don't cost money? I didn't answer. There was no point. I could feel her presence as she entered the kitchen. A storm cloud of disapproval. She stood there, arms crossed over her chest, a queen surveying her disappointing kingdom. "Lily, come here. Come to Grandma," she cooed, her voice instantly transforming, dripping with a saccharine sweetness that was somehow more poisonous than her venom. "Come away from Mommy before she throws a whole stack of plates at your head in one of her little fits." My head snapped up. I would never. "Oh, wouldn't you?" She cut me off, her eyes narrowing. "You have a temper, Ava. I've seen it, simmering right under that pretty, placid little face." I felt a hot surge of rage, so powerful it made me dizzy. 3 years of this, living in her house, under her rules, breathing her air. I am 28 years old. I manage a textile workshop for my sister, overseeing 30 employees. My income is more than respectable. People in our small town see me driving my Audi A3 to work. They see my handsome husband, Ethan, the high school gym teacher. They see this big, beautiful house that has been in his family for generations. They see the perfect picture. They whisper, don't they? Ava has it all. A handsome husband from a good, educated family. She's living the dream. The dream. If they only knew that the dream was a meticulously crafted nightmare, and I was its star prisoner. If they only knew that behind my polite smiles and quiet nods was a vast, silent scream that never ended. Just as I was about to say something I knew I'd regret, Ethan appeared at the top of the stairs. His hair was damp from a shower, and he had that lazy, boyish grin on his face that I once found so charming. "Hey, Ava, could you make me a glass of that fresh squeezed lemonade? I'm dying of thirst up here." My voice was tight, strained. "Can you make it yourself, Ethan? I'm a little busy right now." The air thickened. It was as if I'd just cursed in church. Eleanor's head whipped around, her eyes flashing with triumph. "Did you hear that?" she said, not to me, but to the room, to the universe. "He works all day. All day. He comes home, tired and sore, and asks his wife for a simple glass of lemonade, and she refuses. The laziness. It's astounding." She turned to Ethan, her face softening into a mask of maternal love. "You just go back upstairs and rest, my sweet boy. Mommy will make you the best lemonade you've ever had. She'll even bring it up to you." Ethan just nodded, a simple, "Thanks, Mom," and disappeared back into the bedroom, oblivious. Or maybe not. Maybe he just chose to be. It was easier that way. Eleanor shot me one last look, a look of pure, unadulterated victory. Before turning to the refrigerator, the message was clear. In this house, you are nothing. You are a guest, a servant, and he will always, always choose me. He works all day. He's a gym teacher. He gets home at 4:30 p.m. I get home at 6 p.m. After a 10-hour day of managing schedules, dealing with suppliers, and putting out fires. Then I start my second shift. Dinner, bath time for Lily, cleaning up the hurricane of toys and mess left in our wake. By the time I finally get to shower, it's past 10. But in her eyes, my work didn't count. My exhaustion was invisible. I took a deep, shuddering breath, finishing with the broken plate and wiping the counter until my knuckles were white. I had to get Lily to bed. As I carried my daughter upstairs, I heard their voices from Ethan's and my bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. I paused, my heart a cold stone in my chest. "Did you get paid today, son?" Eleanor's voice was a soft murmur. "Yeah, this afternoon," Ethan replied. "It's in the top drawer of the dresser." I heard the drawer slide open, the soft rustle of cash being counted. My blood ran cold. "All right, I'll take all of it." "Then," she said. A pause. Then Ethan's voice, hesitant. "Mom, could you leave me $50? Just for gas and stuff. I hate having to ask Ava for cash. It's embarrassing." Her reply was a whisper, but it was sharper than a razor. Embarrassing. Why should it be embarrassing? She's your wife. It is her duty to provide for her husband and child. Besides, look at the salary she makes. If you don't take her money, what do you think she's doing with it? Funneling it all back to her own parents. That was it. The final straw on the back of a camel that had been broken for years. I pushed the door open and walked in. Lily balanced on my hip. Eleanor jumped, startled, shoving the wad of cash into her apron pocket. Her face, for a split second, was a mask of pure guilt. Then, just as quickly, it became smooth, unreadable. "Oh, there you are," she said, her voice impossibly casual. "Your son finished his lemonade. I was just about to go downstairs. Get Lily to sleep, you two. You both have a big day tomorrow." She brushed past me without another word. Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes. He just picked up his phone and started scrolling, disappearing into the blue light of the screen. I put Lily to bed, humming her favorite lullaby, my body moving on autopilot while my mind screamed. I waited for him to speak, to explain, to apologize. He never did. By the time I turned around, he was already asleep, his breathing deep and even. 3 years. For 3 years, since the day we got married and moved into this house, I have never seen a single dollar of my husband's salary. On the first of every month, like clockwork, Eleanor asks for it, and he hands it over. All of it. Meanwhile, my own salary, my hard-earned money, bleeds away. I give Eleanor $600 a month for groceries, another $100 for utilities. I pay for gas. I pay for Lily's daycare, her clothes, her toys. I'm the one who buys the expensive cuts of meat, the organic fruit, the special weekend treats for everyone, especially on weekends, because on weekends, his sister comes to visit, Chloe. She's a year younger than me, married to a man with a gambling problem, and has 2 kids of her own. They live just 1 town over, and every Saturday afternoon, like a plague of locusts, they descend upon our house and don't leave until Sunday night. At first, I felt sorry for her. I really did. Her husband, Mark, was bleeding them dry, and I thought she needed a refuge. But I soon learned that my sympathy was a weapon she used against me. She was the fire, and Chloe was the gasoline she poured on it. making sure the flames of Eleanor's hatred for me never, ever died down. She arrives at 5 p.m. on a Saturday, just in time for dinner. The one thing she might do is put a pot of rice on the stove. And that's it. Her contribution is complete. She'll open the fridge, see the yogurt I bought for Lily, and feed it to her own kids without asking. "What's for dinner tonight, Mom?" She'll call out, her mouth full. And Eleanor, doting on her grandchildren, will say, "Whatever you want, sweetie. Just tell Ava." She'll pick it up on her way home from work. And so the call comes. An hour before I'm supposed to clock out, my phone will ring. "Hi, Ava." Chloe's voice, sweet as honey. "You on your way home soon? Just wrapping up. What's up?" Mom and I were thinking, maybe some of that amazing BBQ brisket from the smokehouse, and a couple racks of ribs. Oh, and you know what I've been craving? That loaded mac and cheese they do. Get a big one. Mark loves it. Hundreds of dollars, every single weekend. But it's not their money, so why would they care? Richard, my father-in-law, is the only one who ever says anything. He's a good man, a retired history professor. He sees what's happening, Chloe, he'd say gently, holding Lily in his arms. If you're craving something special, you should buy it yourself. Your sister-in-law works hard for her money. It's not fair to ask this of her every week. And that's when Eleanor would pounce. What is wrong with you, Richard? She is your daughter, your own flesh and blood. Why are you defending this? This outsider. Has she put a spell on you? This isn't about spells, Eleanor. It's about decency. Decency? She's the daughter-in-law. It's her responsibility to care for this family. With the money she makes, if we don't make her spend it here, her own family will bleed her dry. You're getting old, Richard. Your thinking is becoming so limited. Chloe would then chime in, her voice thick with fake hurt. Dad is right, Mom. He's always liked Ava more than me. I don't know what I did to make my own father hate me so much. And the waterworks would start. Eleanor would rush to comfort her, shooting daggers at her husband over Chloe's shoulder. Don't you cry, sweetie. He'll regret this. He'll see who really loves him in the end. Richard would just sigh, a deep, defeated sound, and carry Lily out of the room. He learned long ago that it was a battle he could never win. Tonight was a Saturday, which meant Chloe and her family were here. As I was wiping down the kitchen after our BBQ feast, which, of course, I had paid for, I saw Mark, Chloe's husband, standing in the doorway. He was holding an empty glass. Hey, Ava. I finished my water. I turned, pointing to the water filter pitcher in the fridge. It's right there, Mark. Help yourself. He didn't move. He just stood there, a strange look in his eyes. My hands are tired from playing video games all day, he said with a smirk. Could you get it for me? I sighed, drying my hands. This family's learned helplessness was a disease. I opened the fridge, grabbed the pitcher, and poured him a glass. As I turned to hand it to him, I noticed his eyes weren't on the glass. They were fixed, intently, on my chest. I felt a sudden, disgusting chill. I quickly handed him the water and turned back to the sink, my heart pounding. You're imagining it, Ava. You're just stressed. He walked into the kitchen, setting his glass down. He came to stand beside me at the sink, pretending to rinse out his glass, but he stood too close. So close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. His arm brushed against mine, lingering for a fraction of a second too long. Let me give you a hand with those dishes, he said, his voice low. No, it's fine. I'm almost done. He started rinsing the plates I had already washed, his movements slow, deliberate. His eyes, however, were not on the dishes. I could feel them on me, glancing at my hips, my chest, my neck. I felt like a bug under a microscope. Then he dropped a plate. It clattered into the sink, making me jump. "Whoops," he said, but he wasn't looking at the plate. He was looking right at me, and then it happened. His hand shot out and he slapped me, hard, right across my rear end. The sound was a sharp, ugly crack in the quiet kitchen, a wave of shock, so profound it felt like being submerged in ice water, washed over me. I froze, unable to move, unable to breathe. He leaned in close, his breath hot and sour against my ear. "Damn, Ava," he whispered, his voice thick and guttural. "You are so damn beautiful. So perfect. Just want to take a bite out of you. Just one little bite." And that's when the dam broke. 3 years of swallowed insults, 3 years of silent tears, 3 years of being invisible, of being a human ATM, of being the family mule. It all erupted in a single volcanic blast of pure, white-hot rage. My vision went red. I didn't think. I just reacted. I screamed, a raw, primal sound that came from the depths of my soul. "You son of a bitch." My hand closed around the handle of the heavy cast iron skillet sitting on the stove, and I swung. The sound of metal connecting with his skull was a dull, sickening thwack. He stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock, a hand flying to his head. But I wasn't done. "You want a bite?" I shrieked, advancing on him, the skillet raised high. "Bite this." I brought it down again, and again, and again. He was yelling, trying to shield himself, scrambling backward. "I'll break every single one of your teeth," I screamed, my voice hoarse. "Let's see what you can bite with then. You filthy animal. You pig." He tripped over the kitchen mat and fell, sprawling out into the hallway. He was dazed, trying to crawl away. I stood over him, the skillet raised, ready to bring it down one more time. I was completely out of my mind. I was going to kill him, and that's when Chloe walked in. She saw her husband on the floor, cowering. She saw me, standing over him like an executioner, my face contorted with rage, the skillet in my hand dripping with something. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She just stared, her eyes wide with horror. The spell was broken. I lowered the skillet, my arm trembling from the adrenaline. I looked down at the man on the floor, at my sister-in-law, frozen in the doorway, at the weapon in my hand, and in the sudden, ringing silence, I had only one thought. It's over. Everything is over. But a strange, terrifying new feeling was blooming in my chest, right alongside the fear. It was freedom. Chloe's scream was a high, thin sound, like a frayed wire snapping. "What the hell did you do?" She rushed to Mark, trying to help him up, her hands fluttering over him as if checking for wounds. "Mark, honey, are you okay? Talk to me." I stood there, my chest heaving, the heavy skillet still in my hand. It felt like an extension of my own arm, a cold, iron manifestation of 3 years of repressed fury. "Stay away from him," I snarled, my voice a raw tear in the fabric of the evening. "You have no idea what he did." "I know what you did," she shrieked, her face a twisted mask of outrage. "I saw you. You were trying to kill him." Mark moaned, holding his head. My head. "Ava, she's crazy." He put his hands on me. "Chloe," I said, my voice dangerously low. He slapped my ass and told me he wanted to take a bite. The words hung in the air, ugly and obscene. For a moment, Chloe's face was a blank slate of confusion. Then it hardened into disbelief, then contempt. "You're lying," she spat. "You're a pathetic liar. Mark would never do that." "Oh really? Why not?" "Because he's such a paragon of virtue. Because he's not interested in you. You just hate me. You hate that I come here. You hate that my family is here. So you invent this disgusting story to hurt me, to drive us away. Is this what it feels like to lose your mind? To have reality so blatantly denied to your face that you start to question your own sanity? You think I would make this up? I asked, my voice trembling with a fresh wave of rage. You think I would invent a story about my own brother-in-law sexually harassing me? For what? To get you to stop eating the food I pay for? Is your ego really that massive? Don't you dare talk to me like that in my parents' house. The hypocrisy was so astounding, so breathtakingly audacious, that I laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. Then, without thinking, I turned and swiped the entire rack of clean dishes off the counter. They crashed to the floor in a deafening, chaotic symphony of destruction. Get out, I screamed, pointing a shaking finger at the door. Get out of this house. And that's when they walked in. Eleanor, Ethan, and Richard. They'd heard the commotion and come back from wherever they were. They stopped dead in the doorway, their faces a gallery of shock. They saw the scene. Mark, groaning on the floor. Chloe, standing protectively over him, tears streaming down her face. And me, wild-eyed and disheveled, standing in a sea of broken porcelain, the iron skillet still clutched in my hand like a murder weapon. It was Chloe who spoke first, her voice a theatrical wail. Mom, Dad. She tried to kill him. Ava tried to kill Mark. Eleanor's hands flew to her mouth, a caricature of horror. Oh my God, it's finally happened. She snapped. This house is in chaos. Total chaos. It was Richard, my father-in-law, who stepped forward, his eyes scanning the scene with a calm, analytical gaze. Everyone, calm down, he said, his voice the steady anchor in the storm. Ava, put the skillet down. Chloe, help your husband to a chair. Something has clearly happened here, and screaming at each other is not going to solve it. Ethan, my husband, just stood there, his face pale, his eyes darting between me and Mark on the floor. He looked utterly lost. For the first time in 3 years, his mother hadn't told him what to think. She's a monster, Chloe sobbed, helping a dazed Mark into a dining chair. Look at his head. He might have a concussion, brain damage. I let out another humorless laugh. Oh, please. If I had hit him as hard as I wanted to, he'd be in an ambulance right now, not sitting there whining. The living room felt like a courtroom, a makeshift trial where I was the sole defendant, and the jury had already made up its mind. We were all seated, a tense and miserable tableau. Mark sat slumped in a chair, holding a bag of frozen peas to his head that Chloe had produced from the freezer. Eleanor sat next to him, stroking his arm and glaring at me as if I were a venomous snake. Richard sat in his armchair, his face grim, and Ethan sat on the edge of the sofa, halfway between his mother and me, looking at the floor. A man caught in a no-man's land of his own making. His head is swelling up, Chloe sniffled. A masterclass in victimhood. He's a human being, not a piece of wood you can just beat on. Mom, Dad, you didn't see it. The look in her eyes. It was pure evil. She would have killed him if I hadn't walked in. Richard finally spoke, his voice laced with weary patience. Chloe, stop being so dramatic. Let's hear the whole story. Ava, why did you hit him? Before I could answer, Eleanor interjected, her voice dripping with righteous indignation. What does it matter why? There is no excuse for violence. None. Richard, I cannot believe you. Are you defending her? Again. I am not defending anyone, he said, his voice rising slightly. I am trying to find the truth. I know my daughter-in-law. She is not a violent person. For her to do something like this, she must have been provoked. He then turned his sharp gaze on me. But you are not blameless here, Ava. Smashing every dish in the kitchen, What were you thinking? I was thinking, I said, my voice shaking but clear, that I was tired of being treated like dirt in this house. I was thinking that I was tired of being your personal bank and your maid. And I was thinking that no man has the right to put his hands on a woman without her consent. Eleanor gasped. What is she talking about? Ask him, I said, nodding my head toward Mark. Ask your precious son-in-law what he did in the kitchen just before I picked up that skillet. All eyes turned to Mark. He shrank under the scrutiny, refusing to look at anyone. It's a lie, Chloe insisted. She's making it up. He didn't do anything. Eleanor nodded vigorously. Chloe is right. Mark would never. He's a good boy. There must be a misunderstanding. Ethan finally looked up. He looked at me, his eyes searching my face. Then he looked at Mark, who was still staring at the carpet. A flicker of something, doubt, suspicion, maybe even loyalty, crossed his face. Mark, Ethan said, his voice quiet but firm. Look at me. Mark didn't move. Eleanor started to speak. Ethan, son, don't bother him. He's in pain. Quiet, Mom. Ethan's voice cracked like a whip. It was so sudden, so out of character, that the entire room fell silent. Even Eleanor looked stunned. He stood up and walked over to stand in front of Mark's chair. I am not talking to my mother. I am not talking to my sister. I am talking to you, he said, his voice low and intense. I know Ava. In 3 years of marriage, I have never seen her lose her temper like this. Never. So I am going to ask you one time, and I suggest you tell me the absolute truth. Did you touch my wife? The silence was suffocating. Mark's face was pale, slick with sweat. He kept his eyes down. He didn't do anything. Chloe cried out again. I'm not asking you, Ethan roared, turning on her. I am asking him. So for once in your life, shut your mouth. He turned back to Mark. One last chance. Tell me the truth. Finally, Mark mumbled something, his voice barely audible. What was that? Ethan demanded. Speak up. Mark finally looked up, his eyes darting around nervously. I'm sorry, everyone, he stammered. I apologize to you, Ava. It was a joke. We were just joking around in the kitchen, and I was just being playful. That's all, I swear. I had no bad intentions. I swear on my life. He swore on his life, a life that 10 minutes ago, I was seconds away from ending. The moment he confessed, even in that watered-down, pathetic way, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Eleanor and Chloe immediately seized on the new narrative. A joke, Eleanor exclaimed, her voice filled with relief. See, I knew it. Just a silly misunderstanding. Oh, boys will be boys, Chloe chimed in, suddenly all smiles. See, Ava? He was just playing. That's just Mark's personality. He's a big kid. And you hit him with a frying pan. You nearly broke his skull over a joke. She turned to me, her eyes pleading. You should forgive him, Ava. You guys can just forgive each other. You already got your revenge, right? I mean, look at him. I think you're even now. Even? Did she think this was a game? A schoolyard scuffle? I looked at the faces around me. My mother-in-law, eager to sweep this under the rug. My sister-in-law, desperate to absolve her husband. My own husband, who had spoken up for me for the first time ever, but now looked relieved that he wouldn't have to do anything more. They were all waiting for me to say it was okay, to smooth things over, to go back to being the quiet, accommodating Ava they all preferred. I slowly stood up, my legs feeling unsteady. I walked over to where Mark was sitting. I leaned down, my face just inches from his. This is the first time, I said, my voice a dead calm whisper that cut through the room. And it will be the last. I don't care if you were joking or if you were possessed by the devil himself. If you ever touch me again, or even look at me the wrong way, I will not use a skillet. I will use a knife, and I will not stop until the job is done. Do you understand me? He stared at me, his eyes wide with fear. He nodded slowly, a tiny, jerky movement. Good, I said, straightening up. I turned and looked at Chloe. And you. Your head is so far up your own ass you can't see the truth when it's biting you. You need to watch your husband, because one day, he's going to bring a world of trouble to your doorstep, and I won't be there to stop it. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving them all sitting in the wreckage of their perfect family evening. I went upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and for the first time that night, I let myself tremble. The click of the bedroom door shutting was like the cocking of a gun. I leaned back against the cool wood, my entire body humming with a strange, terrifying energy. I had crossed a line. I had set fire to the bridge of my own quiet suffering. And now I was standing on the other side, watching it burn, with no idea what lay ahead in the darkness. A soft knock came at the door. Ava, Ethan's voice, hesitant, cautious. I didn't answer. I just stood there, breathing, in, out, trying to reclaim my own body. He knocked again, then slowly opened the door. He saw me standing there, my arms wrapped around myself, and his face was a mixture of fear and something I hadn't seen in a long time. Concern. Are you okay? He asked. I almost laughed. Am I okay? The question was so absurd, so completely disconnected from the reality of the past 3 years, the past 3 hours, that it was almost comical. I'm fine, I said, my voice flat. He shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable in his own home, in his own bedroom. Look, what Mark did. It was out of line. Do you want me to go down there and handle him? The offer was so late it was insulting. I handled him, Ethan, I said, looking him straight in the eye. The time for you to handle him was the first time he looked at me too long. The first time Chloe treated me like her personal assistant. The time your mother called me lazy after I'd worked a 60-hour week. You're 3 years too late to the fight. He winced as if I'd physically struck him. He had no defense, and he knew it. You're different tonight, he said quietly, a note of awe in his voice. I'm awake, I replied. For 3 years, I've been sleepwalking. Now, I'm awake. And let me tell you something, Ethan. From this moment on, I am not afraid of your mother. I am not afraid of your sister. I am not afraid of her worthless husband. And I am certainly not afraid of you. I walked over to the dresser and picked up my purse. I opened it and placed it on the polished wood surface between us. Then I looked at him, my gaze as hard as steel. Someone took $250 out of my wallet last night, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. 5 $50 bills. I want it back on this dresser by the time I wake up in the morning. Don't make me ask you where it went, because that will be a conversation that neither of us will enjoy. His face went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, to deny it, but the lie died on his lips. He saw the look in my eyes and knew it was useless. He just gave a small, defeated nod, turned, and walked out of the room, closing the door softly behind him. I had never felt so alone, and I had never felt so powerful. The next morning, the air in the house was thick with unspoken words. The aftermath of the fight hung over the breakfast table like a toxic fog. Chloe and Mark, unsurprisingly, had packed up and fled in the middle of the night. Good riddance. I came downstairs to find Ethan and his mother huddled together at the kitchen island, whispering intently. The moment they saw me, they fell silent. Eleanor gave me a tight, artificial smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. Ethan busied himself with pouring coffee, his back to me. Do you know that feeling when you can sense a conspiracy? When the very air particles seem to realign themselves into a pattern of hostility directed at you? That was my morning. I understood immediately. In their twisted narrative, I couldn't possibly be the victim. A woman who fought back with such ferocity. A woman who would stand up to her husband, her mother-in-law, her entire family. In their minds, such strength, such rebellion, couldn't come from a place of righteous anger. No, it had to be a symptom of something else. It had to be guilt. It had to be a secret. They thought I was cheating. It was so ludicrous, so insultingly predictable, that a plan began to form in my mind. A cold, clear, and beautiful plan. They wanted a drama. They wanted a villain. Fine. I would give them a performance they would never forget. You know what they say about poking a sleeping bear, right? Well, this bear was wide awake now, and she was hungry. That Sunday was a lazy, tense affair. The calm before a storm I was meticulously planning. Around 10 a.m., my friend Lauren called. I had already texted her, laying out the basics of my insane idea. She, being the fiercely loyal and slightly unhinged friend that she is, agreed immediately. I let the phone ring a few times, making sure everyone could hear it. Then I answered, putting it on speaker. Hey, you. Lauren's voice chirped through the phone. Hey, stranger, I said, my voice deliberately light and a little too sweet. From the corner of my eye, I saw Eleanor and Ethan exchange a look. Hook, line, and sinker. Are we still on for today? Lauren asked, playing her part perfectly. Of course. I wouldn't miss it. I've been looking forward to it all week. Perfect. The usual spot around noon. I'll be there, I said. Can't wait. I hung up and turned to face the room. I have to go out for a little while, I announced to no one in particular. Chloe, who had just slunk back into the house looking for a free lunch, perked up. Oh, I thought you were home today. I was hoping you could make that amazing lasagna of yours. Sorry, I said with a dazzling smile. I'm busy. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Busy with what? It's Sunday. A day for family. I'm meeting a friend, I said, keeping it vague. I went upstairs. I took my time. I chose my outfit carefully. A pair of dark jeans, a fitted black turtleneck, and a leather jacket. I put on makeup. Not a lot, just enough to look like I had made an effort. I put on the expensive perfume Ethan had bought me for our anniversary, the one I never wore. I was building a character, the unfaithful wife. When I came back downstairs, the three of them, Eleanor, Ethan, and Chloe, were sitting in the living room, pretending to watch TV. But I could feel their eyes on me, tracking my every move. They were like a pack of clumsy wolves, terrible at hiding their intentions. I picked up my car keys from the hook by the door. I'm heading out, I said cheerfully. Don't wait up. Where are you going, Ava? Ethan asked, his voice tight with forced casualness. Just out, I said, giving him a wink. The wink was a stroke of genius, if I do say so myself. It was so out of character, so brazen, that it cemented their suspicions into absolute certainty. I walked out the door and got into my car. I didn't start it right away. I just sat there, watching them in my rearview mirror. As predicted, the curtain in the living room window twitched. Then, the front door opened, and Ethan, Eleanor, and Chloe scrambled out, piling into Ethan's SUV with a comical lack of subtlety. Eleanor even had her phone out, probably ready to take pictures of my scandalous affair. I smiled. I started the car and pulled out of the driveway, driving slowly, deliberately. I wanted to make it easy for them. After all, you should never disappoint your audience. The usual spot was a quiet, artsy cafe on the edge of town called the Glass House. It was perfect for my plan. It had large, tinted glass windows. From the outside, it was almost impossible to see in clearly, especially during the day. But from the inside, you could see out perfectly. Lauren was already there, sitting at a secluded table in the corner. She had followed my instructions to the letter. She had her long blonde hair tucked up under a dark beanie. She was wearing a loose-fitting black jacket and sunglasses. From a distance, through a tinted window, for someone desperate to see a man, she could absolutely pass for one. I slid into the booth opposite her. "Did they take the bait?" she whispered, a conspiratorial glint in her eyes. I glanced out the window. Ethan's SUV had just pulled into a parking spot across the street, trying and failing to look inconspicuous. "Like sharks to blood," I said, a wide, genuine smile spreading across my face for the first time in what felt like an eternity. Lauren grinned. "Okay, so what's the plan? You want me to hold your hand, gaze into your eyes lovingly?" "Even better," I said, reaching into my bag. I pulled out a small, velvet jewelry box. "I bought this for you, a little thank you gift for being the best co-conspirator a girl could ask for." I opened the box to reveal a delicate silver bracelet. Lauren's eyes widened. "Ava, you didn't have to." "Oh, I absolutely did," I said. I took her hand, my fingers lacing with hers over the table. I picked up the bracelet, holding it up between us, as if admiring it. From across the street, I knew what they would see. Two figures, leaning in close, an intimate moment, hands clasped together, a small, expensive-looking gift being exchanged. It was the perfect picture of an illicit rendezvous. "There's just one more thing," I said, my eyes twinkling with mischief as I looked past Lauren and out the window. "What's that?" "The exit strategy," I said, pointing to the floor under our table. "I hope you brought your walking shoes." On the floor, next to her feet, was a large, industrial-sized can of canola oil I had dropped off earlier that morning. Lauren looked at the can, then back at me, her jaw dropping slightly. "Ava, you are an evil genius." "They drew first blood, Lauren," I said, my smile turning sharp as glass. "I'm just finishing the war." Outside, I saw the door of the SUV fly open. Eleanor was practically vibrating with righteous fury. The show was about to begin. "Showtime," I murmured, taking a slow sip of my latte. Lauren quickly and discreetly unscrewed the cap of the giant oil can. With the skill of a seasoned secret agent, she tilted it, pouring a generous, invisible puddle onto the polished concrete floor right in the main pathway leading from the door to our table. Outside, the three witch hunters were assembling. Eleanor, Ethan, and Chloe stood on the sidewalk, their faces grim and determined, like a suburban lynch mob, ready to storm the castle. I could practically hear Eleanor's internal monologue. "We have her now, the harlot." Caught in the act, they pushed the heavy glass door open and surged inside. "Aha!" Eleanor's voice boomed, shattering the quiet, coffee-scented air of the cafe. "We've caught you, red-handed." Her grand entrance, however, was spectacularly cut short. Her sensible leather shoe hit the slick of canola oil. For a breathtaking moment, she was airborne, her arms windmilling wildly, her face a perfect mask of shock and confusion. Then, gravity, being the cruel mistress she is, took over. She went down, hard. There was a sickening crack as her forehead connected with the sharp corner of a wooden table, followed by a wet, squelching thud as her backside hit the floor. Chloe, right behind her, let out a little shriek and tried to stop, but her momentum carried her forward. Her foot slipped in the same treacherous puddle. She pinwheeled, her legs flying out from under her, and she landed in a clumsy, undignified heap right on top of her mother, scraping both of her knees raw on the rough concrete. Ethan, bringing up the rear, saw the carnage unfolding before him. He opened his mouth, probably to shout my name, or a curse, or both. But in that exact moment, as he took his next fateful step, his expensive running shoe also found the oil. He didn't just fall, he launched. His body flew forward, parallel to the ground, like a superhero who had forgotten how to fly. He landed face first, and the distinct, sharp plink of his two front teeth hitting the leg of a cast iron chair echoed through the now silent cafe. For a moment, there was nothing but stunned silence. The three of them lay on the floor in a tangled, oily pile of limbs and righteous indignation, groaning. Lauren and I slowly turned in our seats, our faces carefully arranged into masks of innocent surprise. The other patrons of the cafe were staring, mouths agape, lattes forgotten. "Oh my God!" Lauren gasped, rushing forward, carefully avoiding the oil slick. "Are you people okay? What happened?" Ethan was the first to try and speak, his words muffled by a hand clamped over his mouth. "Afa. Wa." Eleanor, despite a bleeding gash on her forehead, was the first to recover her voice. She pushed Chloe off of her and struggled to sit up, her eyes blazing with fury. She pointed a trembling, oily finger at me. You witch, you did this," she screeched. Lauren put on her best bewildered face. "Did what? We were just sitting here having coffee, and you all came crashing in like a wrecking ball." Just then, Lauren took off her beanie and sunglasses, letting her long blonde hair cascade down her shoulders. "Oh, hi, Ethan," she said, waving sweetly. "Hi, Chloe, Mrs. Thompson. What are you all doing here?" The realization dawned on their faces, slow and agonizing. They looked at Lauren, then at me. They looked at the bracelet on the table. The man they had come to confront, the mysterious lover, had vanished, replaced by my best friend. Chloe's face crumpled. "Lauren? What?" "But we saw." "You saw us celebrating," Lauren said smoothly, thinking on her feet. "Ava bought me this beautiful bracelet as an early birthday present. We were just catching up." Eleanor's face, streaked with oil and a trickle of blood, was a sight to behold. It was a kaleidoscope of emotions, confusion, embarrassment, fury, and dawning, horrified comprehension. She knew she'd been played. The floor, she stammered, looking at the treacherous, invisible puddle. "It's slippery." I finally stood up and walked over, my shoes carefully gripping the untainted floor. I looked down at my husband, who was still on his hands and knees, spitting blood and what looked like fragments of his own teeth onto the floor. "Ethan, honey, are you okay?" I asked, my voice dripping with faux concern. "You have to be more careful. It looks like one of the staff spilled something here. Tisk, tisk. Such a safety hazard." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with pain, humiliation, and a new, unfamiliar emotion, fear. He knew this wasn't an accident. I helped him to his feet and guided him to a chair. He kept his hand over his mouth, refusing to let anyone see the damage. The great high school athlete, the handsome man about town, was now a gap-toothed mess. Eleanor and Chloe struggled to their feet, their clothes stained, their bodies bruised, their dignity shattered into a million tiny pieces. They didn't say a word. The shame was too thick, too suffocating. What do you say, after all? How do you explain that you stalked your daughter-in-law to a cafe, planning to accuse her of adultery, only to slip in a puddle of what you now suspect was deliberately placed cooking oil and publicly humiliate your entire family? There's no social etiquette guide for that. The ride home must have been a silent, painful affair. I, of course, stayed behind with Lauren to settle the bill and speak to the manager about the dangerous floor. We waited until their SUV was out of sight before we allowed ourselves to collapse into helpless, hysterical laughter. We laughed until tears streamed down our faces, until our sides ached. It was the laughter of the victorious, the oppressed finally getting their revenge. His teeth, Lauren, I gasped, wiping my eyes. His teeth, and your mother-in-law's face when she saw me, Lauren howled. Priceless. Worth every drop of that $10 can of oil. It was, I thought, the best money I had ever spent. But the cherry on top of this beautiful, chaotic Sunday came as they were driving away. As Ethan's SUV, carrying its bruised and broken cargo, turned the corner at the end of the street. A police car, lights flashing, pulled out behind them. I found out later what happened. In his haste to follow me, Ethan had left his wallet at home. No license, no registration, and with Eleanor in the passenger seat and Chloe in the back, he was carrying more passengers than his permit allowed. Their car was impounded on the spot. They had to walk home, the three of them, oily, bleeding, bruised, and toothless. They had to perform a walk of shame through the very town where their reputation was everything. When I finally got home a few hours later, the house was silent as a tomb. Richard met me at the door, his face a mixture of worry and grim amusement. He had already administered first aid. I'm not going to ask what happened, Ava, he said, a small smile playing on his lips. But I will say this. For a woman who claims to know nothing about military strategy, your counteroffensive was devastatingly effective. I found Chloe lying on the sofa, her knees bandaged, staring blankly at the ceiling. She looked up as I walked in. Was it you? She whispered, her voice hoarse. Did you plan it? The oil. I just looked at her. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just let her wonder. Let her think about it. Let her realize who she was dealing with now. The old Ava was gone. This new Ava was not to be trifled with. Eleanor had locked herself in her room, but it was Ethan's reaction that was the most telling. I found him in our bathroom, staring at his new, gappy smile in the mirror. He looked broken. My teeth. He mumbled, his lisp comical and tragic at the same time. They're gone. You can get implants, I said, my voice devoid of sympathy. He turned to look at me, his eyes pleading. Ava. Why? Why what? Ethan, I asked, my voice cold. Why did you fall? Or why did you follow me? He didn't have an answer. He knew, just like his mother and sister knew, that they had created this monster. They had pushed and pushed and pushed, and they had finally found the point where I pushed back. And my push, it turned out, was a shove off a cliff. The war was far from over, but for the first time, I had won a major battle, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that they would never, ever underestimate me again. The days that followed were a landscape of quiet hostility. The house, usually buzzing with Eleanor's criticisms and Chloe's entitled chatter, was eerily silent. It was the silence of a battlefield after the fighting has stopped, filled with the ghosts of explosions and the tension of what might come next. Chloe, hobbling on her scraped knees, made herself scarce. Eleanor nursed her wounded pride and her bruised forehead in her bedroom, emerging only for meals, which she ate in stony silence, refusing to meet my eye. The aura of defeat around them was thick and satisfying, but it was Ethan who was the most changed. The loss of his 2 front teeth seemed to have knocked out more than just his vanity. It had knocked out his arrogance. He needed $3,000 for the dental implants, and he knew there was only one person he could ask for it. He came to me a few days later, while I was getting ready for bed. He hovered in the doorway, a pale ghost of the confident man he used to be. The gap in his smile was a constant, humiliating reminder of his folly. "Ava," he began, his lisp making him sound like a child. I need to ask you for a favor." "What is it, Ethan?" I asked, my voice neutral as I brushed my hair. "The dentist. The implants. It's $3,000, and..." He looked down at the floor. "My mom, she won't give me the money." Of course she wouldn't. In Eleanor's world, money was a tool for control, not a balm for wounds, especially wounds sustained while fighting a war on her behalf. "I see," I said. "So you're asking me." He finally looked at me, his eyes filled with a desperate, pathetic hope. "I'll pay you back, I swear. From my salary, I'll..." He trailed off, the lie too obvious to even complete. His salary wasn't his own. It belonged to his mother. I put down my hairbrush and turned to face him fully. I thought of all the times I had needed him, all the times I had craved a single word of defense, a single gesture of support, all the times he had chosen his mother over me. And yet, looking at him now, so utterly defeated, a strange and unwelcome feeling stirred within me. It wasn't pity, it was something else. A realization that for our marriage to survive, if it was to survive at all, things had to change. And maybe, just maybe, this was the moment. This was the leverage. "I'll give you the money, Ethan," I said. Relief washed over his face, so pure and profound, it was almost painful to watch. "Oh, Ava, thank you. Thank you so much, On one condition, I cut him off. His face fell. "What condition?" "From now on," I said, my voice as calm and steady as a surgeon's hand, "your salary is mine. You get paid. You transfer $300 to your mother for your room and board. You keep $100 for your own expenses, gas, lunches, whatever. The rest comes to me, to a joint account that I control. For Lily, for our future, for this family." He stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. I was dismantling the entire power structure of his life, the very foundation of his relationship with his mother. I can't do that," he stammered. "My mom, she has always controlled you," I finished for him. "And look where it's gotten you, Ethan. Look at your mouth. Look at your life. You are a grown man with a wife and a child, and you have to beg your mother for gas money. Does that not humiliate you?" He didn't answer. He just stood there, the truth of my words hitting him like a physical blow. "This is the deal," I said, pressing my advantage. "Take it or leave it. You can have your pride, or you can have your teeth. You can't have both." I watched him wrestle with it. It was the biggest decision of his life, a choice between his mother and his wife, between the past and a possible future. Finally, he let out a long, shuddering sigh. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, Ava, you win." He didn't know it then, but in that moment of surrender, we both won. The first of the month came, the day of reckoning. I was in the kitchen preparing Lily's breakfast when Eleanor came downstairs. She had that familiar, expectant look on her face. She was waiting for Ethan, waiting for her monthly tribute. Ethan came down a few minutes later. He avoided looking at his mother. He walked over to the coffee machine, his movements stiff and unnatural. "Ethan," Eleanor said, her voice deceptively sweet. "Did you forget what day it is?" Ethan took a deep breath. "No, Mom, I didn't forget." He pulled his phone out, his hands trembling slightly. "I just transferred $300 to your account." The silence in the kitchen was absolute. Eleanor's smile froze, then slowly dissolved. 300, she repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. What happened to the rest? Ethan finally turned to face her. He looked scared, but he also looked taller, straighter. The rest is going to Ava, he said. For Lily. For our family. Eleanor's eyes shot to me. The hatred in her gaze was so pure, so concentrated. It could have curdled the milk in the fridge. She knew. This was my doing. She put you up to this, didn't she? She hissed. That little viper has poisoned your mind against your own mother. Before Ethan could answer, Richard walked in, holding the morning paper. He took one look at the scene. Eleanor's furious face, Ethan's defiant stance, my calm neutrality, and understood instantly. It's about time, son, Richard said quietly, a proud smile touching his lips. A man's first responsibility is to his own wife and child. What you're doing is the right thing. Eleanor whirled on her husband. You're on her side too. What is wrong with this family? Am I the only sane one left? Perhaps you're the only one who refuses to see reality. Eleanor, Richard replied calmly. The boy is building his own life. You should be happy for him. Happy? She shrieked. He's handing his hard-earned money over to her. She'll squander it. She'll give it all to her own parents. The argument escalated, their voices rising, but Ethan and I just stood there, a silent, united front. For the first time, the storm was raging around us, not within us. That night, the house was filled with the sound of Eleanor crashing around in her room, slamming drawers, muttering to herself. She was a queen whose kingdom had just been taken from her, and she was not handling it well. Ethan came and sat on the edge of our bed. He was quiet for a long time. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, he finally said. I know, I replied, but it was the right thing. He looked at me, his eyes clear for the first time in years. She's going to make our lives hell, isn't she? I smiled, a small, tired smile. Let her try, I said. She's not dealing with the old Ava anymore, and she's not dealing with the old Ethan either. And she did try. Oh, how she tried. She gave me the silent treatment. She forgot to save me any dinner. She complained to anyone who would listen about her ungrateful son and her manipulative, money-grubbing daughter-in-law. But something had fundamentally shifted. The power dynamic was broken. She no longer held the purse strings, and without them, her influence over Ethan began to wither. He started coming home from work and playing with Lily instead of hiding in his room. He started helping with the dishes. He started talking to me, really talking to me, about his day, about his hopes, about his fears. He was becoming a husband, a partner. The loss of Eleanor's power created a vacuum, and into that vacuum, a new, tentative peace began to grow. The house was still tense, but it was no longer a war zone. It was more like a Cold War, a quiet, chilly standoff. And for now, that was a victory I was more than willing to accept. The quiet didn't last. In the Thompson family, peace was never a destination. It was merely a brief, deceptive layover on the way to the next war. And the next war, I soon discovered, was being plotted in hushed tones between mother and daughter. Chloe started coming over more frequently again, but her demeanor had changed. The entitled, whining sister-in-law was gone, replaced by a co-conspirator. I'd walk into a room and find her and Eleanor huddled together, their heads bowed, whispering furiously. The moment they saw me, they'd fall silent, plastering fake, saccharine smiles on their faces. They were planning something. I didn't know what, but I could feel it in the air, a static charge of malice. They saw that their direct assaults had failed. The balance of power had shifted. Ethan was no longer their pawn. So, they had to resort to something more insidious. They were going to destroy my character. They were going to frame me. One evening, I was walking past Ethan's home office, and I overheard them. "She's just so smug," Chloe was saying, her voice a venomous whisper. "Walking around here like she owns the place. We have to do something, Mom. We have to get her out." "I know, sweetie. I know," Eleanor soothed. "Patience. We need a plan that he can't deny. Something that will make him see her for the snake she truly is. Something unforgivable." A cold dread washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by a familiar, hardening resolve. "Fine," I thought. "You want to play games? Let's play." The opportunity presented itself a few days later. Eleanor came into the kitchen where I was making dinner. She was holding her favorite piece of jewelry, a heavy, ornate gold chain. It was gaudy and old-fashioned, but it was solid gold and worth a small fortune. "I'm just going to take this off while I help you with the salad," she announced, a little too loudly. She placed the necklace on the small shelf above the spice rack. "I'll just leave it right here, so I don't forget it." It was the most obvious bait I had ever seen. The setup was clumsy, almost insulting in its simplicity. They were going to claim I stole it. I saw Chloe lurking in the hallway, pretending to be on her phone but watching my every move. The trap was set. I finished preparing the meal, completely ignoring the glittering gold chain that sat in plain sight, a silent accusation. We ate dinner. The tension was so thick you could have sliced it with a knife. Eleanor kept glancing from the necklace to my face, waiting for me to make my move. After dinner, as I was clearing the plates, I saw my chance. Ethan got up from the table. "I'm just going to take out the trash," he announced. "Perfect." As he walked out the back door with the trash bag, I made my move. I knew Chloe and Eleanor were watching. I walked over to the spice rack. I reached up and took the gold chain. I held it in my palm for a moment, feeling its weight. Then, I turned and walked straight upstairs to my bedroom. I could feel their triumphant gazes burning into my back. In their minds, the trap had been sprung. The thief had taken the bait. I went into my room. I knew I only had a minute or two. I looked around frantically. Where would they expect me to hide it? My jewelry box? Under the mattress? In a sock drawer? Too obvious. I needed to think like them. What was the one place, the one thing in this room that was uniquely mine? My eyes landed on a small, sealed container on my nightstand. Inside was a piece of durian, the pungent, spiky fruit that I adored, and the rest of the family loathed. The smell alone was enough to make Ethan gag. They wouldn't go near it. It was the perfect hiding spot. Working quickly, I opened the container, dropped the heavy gold chain inside, and sealed it again. I shoved the container to the back of my underwear drawer, behind a stack of old t-shirts. Then I went back downstairs, my face a perfect mask of innocence. A few minutes later, the performance began. "Oh my goodness," Eleanor cried out from the kitchen, her voice filled with theatrical panic. "My necklace, it's gone." Chloe rushed in, playing her part. "What? The one you left on the shelf? Are you sure, Mom?" "Of course, I'm sure. It was right here, and now it's gone. Someone has stolen it." Eleanor looked directly at me, her eyes narrowed with accusation. "This house. We've never had a thief in this house before. Never." Ethan and Richard came in from the living room, drawn by the commotion. "What's going on?" Richard asked. "My gold chain has been stolen," Eleanor wailed. "Right from the kitchen, and I think we all know who the culprit is." I feigned shock. "What are you implying, Eleanor? Are you accusing me of stealing from you?" "If the shoe fits," she retorted. "This is ridiculous," I said, my voice firm. "I didn't take your necklace. I have my own money. Why on earth would I steal from you?" Chloe stepped forward, the voice of false reason. "Look, nobody is accusing anyone. Yet. The simplest thing to do is to just search the house. We'll search every room, one by one. If you have nothing to hide, Ava, then you won't have a problem with that, right? It was a brilliant trap. If I refused, I looked guilty. If I agreed, they would march to my room, find the necklace, and I would be exposed as a common thief. Fine, I said, lifting my chin. Search away. You won't find anything. And so the great search began. They were meticulous. They tore apart the living room, the dining room, Richard and Eleanor's bedroom. Nothing. The entire time, Chloe and Eleanor kept exchanging smug, knowing glances. They were saving the best for last. Finally, they ascended the stairs to our bedroom. This was it. The grand finale. Okay, Ava, Chloe said, rubbing her hands together with glee. Your turn. They entered my room like conquering heroes. Eleanor went straight for my jewelry box. Chloe started pulling open drawers. They were so sure of themselves, so certain of my guilt. Chloe opened the underwear drawer. She rummaged through it. Her hand brushed against the container of durian. She recoiled slightly, her nose wrinkling in disgust. What is that smell? That's my snack, I said sweetly. Want some? She shot me a dirty look and continued searching, completely ignoring the container that held the treasure she was so desperately seeking. They searched for 20 minutes. They looked under the bed, behind the curtains, in the pockets of my coats. Nothing. The smug certainty on their faces began to curdle into confusion. Then frustration. Where is it? Eleanor hissed at Chloe under her breath. I saw her take it. I don't know. Chloe whispered back frantically. It has to be here. Just then, a new thought seemed to strike Ethan. A memory. He walked over to the closet. What's that awful smell in here? He asked, fanning the air. He opened the closet door, and then his eyes landed on an old, forgotten gift bag in the corner. Inside was a dried-out, petrified piece of durian from months ago that I had forgotten about. Ugh, this stuff is disgusting, he said, pinching his nose. He picked up the bag with 2 fingers, intending to take it downstairs to the trash. It was in that moment that everything went spectacularly, beautifully wrong for my accusers. Because what I hadn't known, what none of us could have possibly known, was a second plot had been unfolding. The night before, while Eleanor and Chloe were scheming, Ethan had taken the trash out, and in that trash bag was the old, rotting durian from the closet. The bag was now sitting at the bottom of the large bin at the side of the house, stewing in its own foul juices, and Eleanor, in a moment that could only be described as divine karmic justice, had just thrown her own kitchen trash bag, containing coffee grounds, eggshells, and other assorted garbage, on top of it. Unbeknownst to everyone, the gold chain was no longer in my drawer. It was in the city dump, because while I had been hiding the necklace in the fresh durian container, Ethan had been upstairs. He had smelled the foul odor of the old, forgotten durian in the closet, thinking he was doing me a favor. He had grabbed the plastic container from my drawer, the one with the necklace inside, assuming it was the source of the smell, and had thrown it into the kitchen trash bag that Eleanor would later take out. He had, in his innocent attempt to be helpful, disposed of the evidence and the stolen goods in one fell swoop. Back in the bedroom, the search had yielded nothing. Chloe and Eleanor were starting to look desperate. The trash, Chloe suddenly exclaimed, her eyes lighting up with a new, frantic hope. Maybe she threw it in the trash. Eleanor's face brightened. Of course, the kitchen trash. Let's go. They thundered down the stairs. Ethan and Richard and I followed, a bemused procession in their wake. They reached the kitchen, only to find the trash can empty. Where is it? Eleanor demanded. The trash bag? I took it out earlier, Mom, Ethan said. Eleanor's eyes widened in horror. She looked at Chloe. Chloe looked at her. And in that moment of shared, silent panic, they both knew. They bolted out the back door and ran to the large bin at the side of the house. They threw open the lid. It was empty. The garbage truck had come. The wail that Eleanor let out was a sound of pure, unadulterated agony. It was the sound of a woman who had not only lost a war, but had also been forced to pay for the ammunition. She had lost her necklace, her precious 24-carat, $2,000 necklace. She sank to her knees on the pavement, a tragic, garbage-scented Medea, and wept. Chloe just stood there, her face ashen, staring at the empty bin as if it were an open grave. Their perfect, foolproof plan had not just failed, it had backfired in the most spectacular and expensive way imaginable. And I, the intended victim, had done absolutely nothing. Sometimes, I thought, as I watched my mother-in-law sob over her lost treasure, the best revenge is the one you don't even have to plan. Sometimes, the universe does it for you. The scene that followed was a masterclass in tragicomedy. Eleanor, a woman who wouldn't touch a dishcloth without rubber gloves, was now proposing a field trip to the city dump. "We have to go," she wailed, scrambling to her feet, her face streaked with tears. "It might not be too late. Ethan, get the car keys. We have to find that truck." "Mom, it's 9 o'clock at night," Ethan said, his voice weary. "The dump is closed, and even if it wasn't, it's a mountain of trash. We'd never find it." "I don't care," she shrieked. "That was your grandmother's necklace. We are not giving up on it." And so, against all reason and logic, the great garbage hunt began. Ethan, ever the dutiful son, though now a reluctant one, drove his mother to the municipal waste management facility on the industrial outskirts of town, a place of staggering filth and overwhelming odors. I found out the details later, recounted by a traumatized Ethan. They arrived to find a vast, dark landscape of garbage hills under the harsh glare of industrial floodlights. Dozens of massive garbage trucks were parked in neat rows, their metallic shells glinting like sleeping beasts. "Which one is it?" Eleanor demanded, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and horror. "How am I supposed to know, Mom?" Ethan replied, his voice strained. "They all look the same." "Well, we have to look in all of them." And so they did. For the next hour, my husband and my mother-in-law, a woman who prided herself on her immaculate home and refined sensibilities, climbed in and out of dumpsters, tearing open plastic bags, wading through mountains of other people's filth. They were covered in coffee grounds, sticky soda residue, and things too disgusting to even contemplate. Their quest attracted the attention of the night shift workers, 2 women in bright orange vests, who were not amused by the sight of civilians playing in their garbage. "Hey, what do you 2 think you're doing?" one of them shouted, marching over. "We're looking for something," Eleanor snapped, not bothering to look up from the bag of rotting vegetables she was inspecting. "I don't care what you're looking for. You can't be here. And you're making a huge mess. You tear open a bag. You put it back in the truck when you're done." Eleanor, already at the end of her rope, finally snapped. "Don't you tell me what to do. Your job is to deal with trash. This is trash, so deal with it." The sanitation worker's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me, lady, we collect the trash from the bins. We don't clean up after rich people who decide to go dumpster diving and throw it all over the ground." The argument escalated. Voices were raised. Insults were hurled. Eleanor, in her grief and fury, called the woman a low-class garbage picker. The woman, in a moment of beautiful, karmic poetry, responded by picking up a shovelful of the foulest, most disgusting garbage she could find and flinging it directly at Eleanor's head. My mother-in-law, the queen of her suburban castle, stood there, dripping with old spaghetti sauce and soggy diapers, utterly defeated. The fight was knocked out of her. They came home close to midnight, empty-handed and smelling like the very bowels of the city. Eleanor was a ghost of herself, her body and spirit broken. She stumbled into the house, walked straight to the living room sofa, and collapsed, falling into a fitful, garbage-scented sleep without even taking off her shoes. She stayed that way for a week. She developed a fever, a psychosomatic illness born of loss and humiliation. She refused to eat. She refused to speak. She just lay on the sofa, a tragic monument to her own failed schemes. Richard tried to coax her to eat. Ethan pleaded with her, but she just turned her face to the wall. Chloe, the co-conspirator, was nowhere to be seen. She knew her mother's grief would have a price tag, and that price would be $20,000, the cost of the necklace. So, she made herself scarce, refusing to answer her mother's calls. One afternoon, I decided to try. I made a simple, fragrant fish congee, the kind of comfort food that can soothe any soul. I brought a bowl into her. "Eleanor," I said softly, "you need to eat something." She didn't move, pretending to be asleep. "I know you're awake," I said. "Please, just a few bites, for your health." She finally turned, her eyes hollow and filled with a tired, familiar hatred. "You're happy about this, aren't you?" she rasped, her voice weak. "Seeing me like this, you must be thrilled." I sighed, setting the bowl down on the coffee table. "No, Eleanor, I'm not happy. This house has been miserable for the past week. Lily can feel it. We can all feel it. I don't want to live in a miserable house. My life is miserable because of you. Your life is miserable because of your own actions," I said, my voice still calm, but with an edge of steel. "You tried to destroy my marriage. You tried to turn my husband against me. You tried to paint me as a thief. This isn't my fault. This is the consequence of your own choices. Get out," she whispered. "Take your poison soup and get out of my sight." My patience, already worn thin, finally snapped. "Fine," I said, my voice rising. "You want to hate me? Go ahead. I don't need your love. I never did. For 3 years, I have treated you with respect. I have tried to be a good daughter to you, even when you treated me like a servant. I wanted us to be a family, but if you are determined to see me as the enemy, then fine. From this day forward, that's what I'll be. You and me, we're strangers living in the same house. We will not speak. We will not interact. You live your life, and I will live mine. Is that what you want?" She stared at me, her mouth a thin, hard line. She gave a small, sharp nod. "Get out." "With pleasure," I said. I picked up the bowl of congee and walked out of the room. As I passed the trash can in the kitchen, I paused. Then, deliberately, I scraped the entire contents of the bowl into the trash. If she wouldn't accept my peace offering, then she wouldn't get it. The time for olive branches was over. That evening, with me out of the house, taking Lily to my parents for dinner, Eleanor finally emerged from her cocoon of misery. Starvation had apparently won out over pride. She crept into the kitchen, looking for the congee. When she found it was gone, she flew into a rage, accusing Richard of throwing it out. She ended up eating cold, leftover rice with a fried egg, a pauper's meal for a fallen queen. The next day, she called Chloe, and this time, Chloe answered. An hour later, she showed up, looking nervous. "Do you have the money?" was the first thing Eleanor said to her. "What money?" Chloe asked, feigning ignorance. "The $20,000 you owe me for my necklace." "I don't owe you anything," Chloe shot back. "It was your idea. And besides, I don't have that kind of money. Mark would kill me. You were a part of it. You helped. You have to pay." "No, I won't." The argument escalated into a screaming match. It became physical. Eleanor, in her weakened state, lunged at Chloe, grabbing a handful of her hair. Chloe, shocked and furious, shoved her mother back. It wasn't a hard shove, but Eleanor was frail. She was standing on the small step, leading from the kitchen to the back patio. She lost her footing. She stumbled backward, her arms flailing, and she fell. She landed hard on the stone patio, her head hitting the ground with a sickening, final thud. And then, she was still. Chloe froze, her hands flying to her mouth, a silent scream trapped in her throat. She had just knocked her own mother unconscious. Richard, hearing the commotion, rushed in and found his wife lying motionless on the ground. He called an ambulance. He called Ethan. He called me. By the time I got to the hospital, the news was in. Eleanor had suffered a stroke, a massive one. The doctor was grim. Her prognosis was not good. She would survive, but she would never be the same. She would be partially paralyzed. She would need constant care. Her life and all of our lives had been irrevocably altered in the space of a single angry shove. We all sat in the sterile, silent waiting room, a broken family united by a tragedy of our own making. Chloe was inconsolable, sobbing into her husband's shoulder, consumed by a guilt so profound it was almost a physical presence in the room. Richard sat staring into space, his face a mask of gray shock. Ethan paced back and forth, a caged animal. And me, I just sat there, a strange, hollow feeling in my chest. I should have felt something. Triumph, sadness, pity. But I felt nothing. Just a vast, empty quiet. The queen had fallen. The war was over. And nobody had won. The weeks that followed were a blur of antiseptic smells, hushed conversations, and the relentless beeping of machines. Eleanor's recovery was slow, agonizing. The stroke had stolen the mobility from her left side and had slurred her speech, transforming the once formidable matriarch into a frail, dependent woman. The fire in her eyes, once a blazing inferno of disapproval, was now a dim, flickering ember of confusion and fear. I took a week off from work. Chloe, consumed by guilt, also took time off. We fell into a strange, unspoken truce, a tag team of caregivers for the woman who had tormented us both. We bathed her, fed her, helped her with her physical therapy. We didn't speak of the past. We didn't speak of the fall. We just moved through the sterile, quiet routines of the hospital. Two soldiers from opposing armies forced to work together to save a fallen general. It was during those long, quiet hours by her bedside that I began to see her not as my jailer, but as a person, a broken, frightened woman who was trapped inside a body that would no longer obey her commands. And in that shared space of vulnerability, something shifted. The hatred I had carried for so long, the heavy armor of my anger, began to feel pointless. It was like trying to wage war against a ghost. When she was finally discharged, the house became a different kind of hospital. A hospital for a wounded family. I took over the household completely. The cooking, the cleaning, managing Eleanor's medication and her appointments. I did it without complaint, without resentment. It was just what needed to be done. Chloe came by every day after work. She would sit with her mother, reading to her or just holding her hand. The old dynamic was gone. There was no more scheming, no more whining for handouts. There was just a daughter, trying to atone for a moment of anger that had changed everything. One afternoon, I came home from work to find Chloe and Eleanor in the living room. Eleanor was sitting in her wheelchair, looking out the window. Chloe was sitting on the ottoman beside her. "Ava's been taking good care of you, hasn't she, Mom?" Chloe said, her voice soft. "She's a good cook, much better than me." Eleanor didn't answer. She just continued to stare out the window. Chloe sighed. You know, Mom, you don't have to give her the money anymore for groceries and things now that she's, doing everything. Eleanor's head turned slowly. She looked at Chloe, then at me as I stood in the doorway. Her expression was unreadable. Chloe continued, her voice gaining a bit of its old, petulant tone. I just mean, you don't want her to take all your savings, do you? Funnel it back to her own family. It was a ghost of an old argument, a reflexive jab from a lifetime of habit. But Eleanor surprised us both. She looked at Chloe, and her eyes, for the first time in a long time, held a spark of their old fire. But it wasn't directed at me. Chloe, she said, her voice a slurred but firm command. Be quiet. She is family. She is good to me. She then looked at me, a deep, weary sadness in her eyes. Not like you. Chloe recoiled as if she'd been slapped. Mom, I didn't mean. I was just looking out for you. You look out for yourself, Eleanor managed to say, her breath coming in short, difficult bursts. The words, though broken, were clear. It was a condemnation, a final judgment. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. But I'm your daughter, Ava. Is daughter now, Eleanor whispered. That was the moment. The final, definitive shift in the tectonic plates of our family. Chloe stood up, her face a mask of hurt and betrayal. She looked at me, and I saw a flicker of the old hatred. In her mind, I had won. I had stolen her mother's affection, the one thing she thought was hers by right. She stormed out of the house. I walked over to Eleanor and knelt by her wheelchair. I took her hand. It was cold and limp in mine. Don't say that, Eleanor, I said quietly. She's your daughter. She loves you. She just shook her head, a single tear rolling down her wrinkled cheek. From that day on, something new began to grow in the ruins of our old relationship. It wasn't love, not yet. It was something quieter, more fragile. It was respect. It was understanding. She saw me not as the enemy, but as the person who showed up, the person who cared for her when she couldn't care for herself. Chloe's visits became less frequent. The wound of her mother's rejection was too deep. When she did come, she was sullen and resentful, her presence casting a pall over the house. One evening, her bitterness finally boiled over. I can't believe you, she spat at me in the kitchen while Eleanor was napping. You love this, don't you? Playing the saint, turning her against me. I had reached my limit. I was tired of her self-pity, her refusal to take responsibility for her own actions. I turned from the sink, my hands dripping with soapy water. Let me tell you something, Chloe, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Your mother is sick. She needs peace. She needs care. She doesn't need your drama. For years, you came to this house, and you took. You took food, you took money, you took energy, you took peace. You acted like a spoiled child, and now you're angry because the consequences of your actions have finally caught up with you. I'm her daughter. Then, act like one, I snapped, taking a step toward her. I was so tired of being calm. A daughter doesn't shove her sick mother. A daughter doesn't abandon her when she's at her lowest. A daughter doesn't try to poison her against the one person who is actually taking care of her. You are a grown woman with children of your own. It is time for you to grow up. I was so angry. I was shaking. I grabbed her by the arm, my fingers digging in. From now on, when you come into this house, you will treat your mother with respect, and you will treat me with respect. If you can't do that, then don't come back. We don't need you here. She just stared at me, her eyes wide with shock. I had never spoken to her like that. No one had. She yanked her arm away and fled the house without another word. That night, after I had put Eleanor to bed, there was a soft knock on my bedroom door. It was Eleanor, standing there with her walker, her face etched with worry. In her hand, she held a small cloth bag. "Ava," she said, her voice a soft, slurred whisper. "Eleanor, you should be in bed," I said, guiding her to sit on the edge of my mattress. She pushed the cloth bag into my hands. "For you," she said. "For everything." I opened it. Inside was a thick stack of cash, several $1,000s. It was her savings, the money she had hoarded for years, the money she had squeezed from my salary, and Ethan's. I tried to give it back. "No, Eleanor, I can't take this. You need this. For your care, for your future. You are my future," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "You and Ethan and Lily, please take. I trust you." And in that moment, looking at the proud, broken woman offering me everything she had left, the last vestiges of my anger finally melted away, replaced by a profound, aching sadness and a glimmer of something that felt astonishingly like love. I took the money, not for me, but for her, to manage for her, to be her steward. I looked at her, and I made a promise. "I need you to do something for me too," I said. "Talk to Chloe. Forgive her. She's your daughter. She made a mistake. She needs her mother." She looked at me for a long time, then she slowly, painfully nodded. The next time Chloe came to visit, Eleanor was waiting for her. I left them alone, but later, Chloe came to find me in the kitchen. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, but for the first time, her face was clear of bitterness. "Thank you," she said quietly. It was just one word, but it was everything. Life is not a fairy tale. The scars of our battles don't just disappear. The house is still quiet. Chloe and I are not best friends. Eleanor will never walk again. But something has been rebuilt from the ashes. A fragile peace, a tentative understanding. Ethan is a different man, a true partner, a loving father. He sees me now, really sees me, not as an extension of his mother, but as his wife. I often think about that night, the night I picked up that iron skillet. It was the moment my life broke in two. There was the before, and there is the after. The before was a quiet, slow-motion drowning. The after has been a difficult, painful, and sometimes beautiful lesson in what it means to stand up, to fight back, and to find the strength to forgive. Not just others, but yourself. I don't know what the future holds, but I know this. I am no longer a prisoner in my own home. I am no longer invisible. I am Ava, and for the first time in a very long time, I am finally free.